Let's talk about toxic fandoms. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Working Title, the show where we talk about books, movies, and everything in between. Today, we are asking the question, what makes fandoms toxic? Now, in theory, that sounds like an easy question, but fandoms are a lot more complicated than they appear. Take it from someone who's in a few. But because fandoms are so complicated, that makes figuring out what makes them toxic complicated. Now, do not take what I say as fact. This is merely speculation and my opinion based on mine and other people's experiences in fandom. Now, we're going to break this up into different segments of why I think fandoms can become toxic. Okay, ships. Let's start with what is a ship? A ship, as defined by Urban Dictionary, the most reliable source on the internet.
I'm going to have to put on my fucking double-seeing glasses because I can't even begin to see the amount of bullshit coming from you.
Urban Dictionary defines a ship as you either want two characters to become an item, kiss, or enter a romantic/sexual relationship. A common phrase, at least that I've heard, for when a ship gets together is that the ship has sailed. Now, there is some discourse on the concept of shipping, period. If you want a really good video, if you want a really good look into that, Sarah Zed over on YouTube made a video called Fandom's Biggest Controversy, the story of pro-shippers versus anti-shippers. Just check her out. She does really good looks at aspects of fandom and Tumblr culture that I just don't have the ability to do. Anyway, back to ships. Outside of the discourse over should ships exist at all, there is also discourse within people who do ship characters. I'm going to use My Hero Academia as an example here because they're really the only fandom that I've seen that are so intense when it comes to ships. Now, if you're a member of the MHA fandom, then you probably know some of the major ships. Those being Bakudeku, Totodeku, Kiribaku, Kirikami, Shinkami, and Izu Ocha. The ones we are going to be discussing are Bakudeku and Izu Ocha. Now, if you've seen the show, then you probably know that of all the ships that exist, the one between Izuku Midoriya and Ochako Uraraka is probably the one that would become canon. But there are members of the fandom that are not okay with that. Bakudeku shippers, or people who ship the characters Katsuki Bakugo and Izuku Deku Midoriya, are fiercely protective over this ship. Now, I actually wrote a short essay on my thoughts on Bakudeku, so I'm going to read that to you. The history of these two characters is that they were childhood friends up until Bakugo got a quirk, a superpower in the My Hero Academia world that people are born with, and Midoriya was deemed quirkless. Bakugo started bullying Midoriya. This accumulated to members of the fandom shipping the two with an enemies to lovers dynamic, which I love enemies to lovers and could write a whole essay on why it's my favorite romance trope. My opinion on the ship, however, is that it is a terrible ship that should not be canon. While I do enjoy the concept of friends to enemies to lovers, and I think if done correctly could lead to a really interesting dynamic, in the case of Bakudeku, a relationship between the two of them could be extremely unhealthy. A lot of it comes down to their history and the bullying that Midoriya endured at the hands of Bakugo. While, if my memory is correct, we never see the full extent of Bakugo's bullying and only get tidbits here and there, there's one event that happens in the first episode that shows how far Bakugo was willing to go to hurt Midoriya. Towards the beginning of the first episode, Bakugo tells Midoriya that if he wants to be a hero, he should, and I quote, "take a swan dive off the roof and pray you'll get a quirk in your next life." In defense of Bakugo, he was told most of his life that he was amazing and that he had a very powerful quirk. So he has an ego so large and fragile that one hit to it is enough to send him spiraling. And while this does not justify what he did, it does help explain why he did it. However, none of this changes the fact that the history between Bakugo and Midoriya could lead to an extremely unhealthy/toxic relationship, especially due to Bakugo's pride. Now, I should point out that I do read and enjoy fan fictions of the two characters. And like I mentioned, I do think that the dynamic, if done correctly, could make for a really interesting story. But with that being said, it is a ship that I personally would not want to become canon. However, the reasons that I stated doesn't stop people from pestering crew members of the show and even the author of the original manga, Kohei Horikoshi. Am I saying that right? I feel like I'm saying that wrong. I'm going to assume that it's right for now, but I feel like I'm saying it wrong. To make this ship canon. Now, I'm not saying that all Bakudeku shippers are like this, but a very vocal percentage of them are, and it leads to toxicity in the fandom, because they have the belief that if you don't agree with their ships, then you shouldn't be part of the fandom. This also ties into another part of fandoms that can make them toxic. Gatekeeping. It is in almost every fandom. It's almost impossible to escape. Gatekeeping, at least that I've seen, is most common in music-related fandoms and anime fandoms. Okay, I say this as an anime fan. Why can't we just let people watch shit? Who cares if they watch dub or sub, or if they read the manga? Why can't we just be glad that there are people who enjoy the same things we do? Alright, now that I'm off my soapbox, let's actually talk about the issue with gatekeeping. If you don't know what gatekeeping is, it is essentially the act of limiting what other members of the fandom can and can't enjoy when it comes to that fandom. It's usually done by assholes with nothing better to do than tell people how to live their lives. So yeah, I think you can guess my feelings on gatekeeping. Circling back to anime fandoms and my mini rant, some of the gatekeeping that happens there is that if you don't watch shows in sub, original Japanese audio with subtitles, then you basically shouldn't call yourself an anime fan. Now, I personally have an issue with this, as I'm someone who watches anime dubbed English audio. Then, of course, there's gatekeeping in music fandoms, especially when it comes to rock music. However, I'm not qualified to talk about those. But Finn McKenty over at the Punk Rock MBA is. He's someone who not only has been... Hold on. Sorry. He's someone who's not only been in the scene, but has also worked in the industry. So if you want really good looks at gatekeeping in music, check him out. I would recommend his Most Hated Bands series. Now, there's an aspect of fandoms that I didn't even consider until doing research for this episode. The size of the fandom can actually have quite an impact on the environment of said fandom. Let's be honest, some people just suck. Yes, and so the larger a fandom is, the more likely it is to become toxic. Now, that makes a lot of sense actually, especially in the age of the internet. You are always going to have people who just want to offend everyone else. Then, of course, as I touched on earlier, you're going to have people who are just loud and obnoxious about things that probably shouldn't be defended, such as romantic Zore, which is its own rabbit hole that I'm not going to fall down today. Well, that's all I have for today. There are probably more things that I missed, but like I said, fandoms are extremely complicated. However, if you want to be part of a non-toxic fandom, may I lead your attention to the Sandersides fandom. It is probably the most accepting and chill fandom there is, and it is surrounded around an absolute unicorn of a human, Thomas Sanders. Yes, I am a bit of a stan. So, yeah, there's that episode. If there's any aspects of toxic fandoms that you think I missed, leave me a message, if you're listening to this on Anchor. And if you want to talk to me, get updates on episodes, or even suggest ideas for episodes, check me out on Reddit at AshleyMarieWT. And until next time, peace out.
On to the next one, bitches!